Skirk is finally getting her first rerun, and a lot has changed since her original release. So today, let's break down everything you need to know, starting with her kit. At first glance, Skirk's kit might look overwhelming, but in practice, she's actually very easy to play. She has two main playstyles, an on-field DPS playstyle and a burst support playstyle. We'll start with her on-field DPS role, because this is how most players will be using her. Skirk is only the second character in the game who does not rely on energy recharge. Instead, she uses a unique resource system called Serpent's Subtlety and Void Rifts. Her entire gameplay loop revolves around generating these resources and consuming them to deal damage. Her simplest and most consistent rotation looks like this. You press her skill to gain Serpent's Subtlety. Then you perform 5 normal attacks. After that, you use her burst to absorb the Void Rifts. Then you do 5 more normal attacks, followed by a charged attack to absorb another Void Rift, and finally 5 additional normal attacks. This is her basic rotation, and it already performs extremely well. If you want to increase her damage further, you can use animation cancels. The simplest and most practical method is dash canceling her 5th normal attack. Her 5th hit has a noticeably longer animation, and canceling it allows you to fit in more normal attacks, resulting in a small but noticeable DPS increase. If you want to fully maximize her damage, her optimal combo looks like this. Normal attack 2 times, dash cancel. Normal attack 2 times, dash cancel. Repeat this sequence, then use her burst, followed by a charged attack dash cancel, and repeat again. This advanced combo provides roughly 5,000 more DPS, but it is significantly harder to execute and is almost impossible for mobile players. For most players, the simple N5 dash cancel rotation is the best balance between damage and consistency. Now let's talk about her second playstyle, her burst damage support role. When you hold her skill, Skirk consumes her resource points to charge her burst. Once the burst reaches 50%, you can activate it to deal damage and then swap back to your main DPS. This playstyle is mainly used when Skirk is paired with another on-field damage dealer and is meant to provide additional burst damage. We'll go deeper into this later when we discuss her teams. Now moving on to Skirk's build. Skirk is an attack-scaling DPS, and the majority of her damage comes from her skill and burst. Because of this, you should prioritize leveling those talents, and you can safely skip leveling her normal attack talent. For weapons, any attack-scaling or crit-based weapon works well on her. I'll put all the recommended weapon options on screen so you can review them easily.
For artifacts, Skirk has 2 best-in-slot options, Marechaussee Hunter and Finale of the Deep. Even though Marechaussee Hunter is not her signature set, it performs almost on par with it. However, this set does come with some important considerations. Marechaussee Hunter requires you to play Skirk with Farina, and because the set provides a massive amount of crit rate, you can very easily overcap your crit, especially if you are also using a crit rate weapon. Her signature set is slightly weaker in raw numbers, especially for players who already have good Marechaussee Hunter pieces, since the 2 sets are extremely close in terms of stats. That said, the signature set gives you far more freedom in how you build Skirk, particularly if you don't want to rely on Farina. So if you do not own a plunge DPS, and you do not plan on farming that domain, then Marechaussee Hunter is still the most practical and efficient option overall. I hope that clears up the artifact situation.
Now let's talk about Skirk's teams. Skirk is without question one of the most restrictive characters in the entire game. Her passive grants Serpent's Subtlety when you trigger Cryo Swirl, Cryo Crystallize, Freeze, or Superconduct. This already limits her team options, but things get even more restrictive when you look at her third passive. Her third passive provides a massive damage bonus, but only if your team consists of Hydro and Cryo characters only. And if you're thinking, I'll just ignore that passive, let me be very clear. You should not. That buff is far too large to give up. Because of this, Skirk's teams are locked almost entirely to Hydro and Cryo units. Fortunately, she still has some very strong options. She can be paired with units like Escoffier, who is currently the best freeze support in the game, Furina, Shinha, Citlali, Yelan, Mona, Milani, and several strong 4-star options. Her best-in-slot team is without question built around Escoffier.
After Escoffier, her second best support is Furina, and for the 4th slot you can use almost any of the other 5-star units mentioned earlier, as their performance is mostly very similar. When it comes to setups, especially for DPS units like Skirk who deal the majority of the team's damage themselves, it is always recommended to buff the on-field DPS as much as possible. So if you are using Furina, she will almost always be preferred on Tenacity. Escoffier should be on Noblesse if no one else is holding it. And if you are using supports like Citlali or Milani, they should be holding Thrilling Tales and Cinder City. This setup will always outperform variants where you try to run sub-DPS artifact sets on Furina or Escoffier. Now, talking about buffs. As mentioned earlier, Escoffier is the single most valuable unit for Skirk. Even Furina does not make as big of a difference. You can replace Furina with many other 5-star units and still be completely fine, but this does not apply to Escoffier. Escoffier, specifically in freeze teams, is just completely broken. She deals strong damage, provides healing for Furina, and offers unmatched buffs that no other unit can come close to replicating. If you remove Escoffier, you are forced to add a healer, or you lose all of Furina's buffs from the 2nd rotation onward. That means you are locked into units like Diona, Barbara, or Charlotte. And all 3 of these units provide almost no buffs, outside of occasionally holding Thrilling Tales. I am not saying Skirk is bad, but the damage difference between a Skirk team with Escoffier and a Skirk team without Escoffier is absolutely massive. Together, they form one of the strongest duos in the entire game. Skirk, even as the 5th strongest DPS in the game, will clear most content very easily with this pairing. That said, there are still some issues. Skirk's best support being Escoffier is also her biggest limitation. Escoffier herself is extremely restricted to freeze teams. Outside of full Hydro and Cryo compositions, she becomes almost half a unit. Her damage drops sharply, her application becomes mediocre, and she essentially turns into nothing more than a Cryo healer. Compare this to a support like Ineffa for Flynn's. Ineffa buffs Flynn's team damage by a massive amount, similar to Escoffier, but unlike Escoffier, Ineffa has multiple use cases across many different team archetypes, which makes her an insane unit overall. Escoffier, on the other hand, is a unit you will almost exclusively use with Skirk, or occasionally in melt teams, and that's it.
And especially after 3 to 4 months when content gets even harder, this restriction becomes much more noticeable. As mentioned earlier, Hydro is one of the most broken elements in the game, and it does have an insane number of buffers that can still make Skirk usable, but do not expect her to reach the same damage ceiling as something like Flynn's with Ineffa when Skirk is played without Escoffier. Now, talking about pull value, if we rate things fairly, almost all modern DPS units, including Mavica, Flynn's, Nefer, Zibai, and Skirk, sit very close to each other in terms of damage for most players. Your actual performance will heavily depend on your build quality and team setup, which makes all of them insanely good DPS options if your account simply needs a damage dealer. However, the Skirk-Escoffier duo is different. They are heavily restricted to freeze compositions and cannot be paired freely with other archetypes, and in the long term, this significantly limits your options. This is exactly why, from a value perspective, it is often better to prefer DPS duos like Nefer and Lauma. They work extremely well in bloom-based teams, but can also transition into other setups. For example, Lauma can be played in Hyperbloom with Columbina or used as a flexible Dendro unit in many different team archetypes. She can even function in Kinich teams, holding Thrilling Tales and providing Resistance Shred, or be used in Burgeon teams with Durin, which gives you far more long-term flexibility. If you want a full banner breakdown, make sure to check the video on screen. I hope this video helped. Till then,